And so for this evening, this is, we always like to start with a quick little quote, but this says, for people to discover your website, you need to build pathways and big flashing signs that lead them there. And this is so true. Think about if you had a store on a highway or something like that, right? How are you going to get people to notice you? And so in digital marketing terms, this means you need links, links, and more links. And we're going to be talking about that in conjunction with PR tips that we have. But really, everything that we'll talk about tonight is ways for you and your business to get free PR. And that's through some PR tips, but also through backlinking as well. And for those of you, I should say, that have joined us before, we try to keep the same format for all of our webinars. We share 3 basic things with you. We try to keep it focused on free always. We try to keep it focused on things that you can do somewhat immediately, where you don't need to hire somebody to do it, but really practical, simple things that you can do yourself. And for today's session, we're going to be talking again about how to generate PR. We're going to talk about media relationships. We're going to talk about finding the right story. And then we're going to wrap up with some free PR tools that you can be using. Again, you can start right away. And I'm going to start first talking about, how to build good relationships with the media. And we may go back and forth a little bit, start talking about this. And there are 3 things that we felt like were really important: social media, providing good content, and knowing lead times. For social media, it's one of the things I think people forget about is, journalists are just people. And it sounds real stupid, but, I think people forget about that sometimes. So they do the same things that we all do. They go to the store, they're on social media, they have a website sometimes, they have a job, they have deadlines. And if you want to partner with them, if you want to build good relationships, it's no different than you would with a prospective customer or a partner. You get to know them. And the way that you can do that, or one of the ways you can do that, is through social media. And I think, Stephanie, we can come back to, I know you want to make a specific point here, we can come back to that. But one of the ways is social media, and a lot of things that we've seen work. Researching is always good, but also just following what they're doing, right? So maybe they're working on a story or they're writing something, and it doesn't have to do with your business, but you can still provide feedback the same way you would with one of your colleagues on LinkedIn. It's that same thing, just making them aware that you're following what they're doing, you're interested in what they're doing, and that can go a long way with building that relationship. The second thing is providing good content. That also probably seems obvious, but what you don't want to do is, kind of burn or sour relationships by providing not so good content or crap to them. And so you want to become a resource for them, just like they're a resource for you. And you want to have relationships with people so that when they have a story, they actually come to you. Maybe it's not because they want to interview you, but they might say, hey, do you know anybody who could fill this need that I have? You want to become a resource for them, and that can help you in the long run. But the way that you do that is by making a good first impression. So if you have a good story, or if you have a good piece of content to share with them, then making sure you do that. So always, make that good first impression and then continue to build that relationship. And the last thing here is to understand their lead times. This one is really important too. A lot of journalists and folks in the media, they're working within kind of unreasonable timelines sometimes. They might have, call you in the morning and need something that afternoon. So they're working on pretty tight deadlines. That's not always something they said. It's coming from their producers or whomever, but you need to understand what that is. That could be different from somebody who's writing something for digital versus somebody who's doing something for television, or somebody who's doing something for a magazine or newspaper. And so depending on what outlet they work for, what they're writing for, or who they're writing for, you need to understand what those typical lead times are. Sometimes they're different, but what the typical lead times are, so that you're not a bottleneck in their process. You're not causing them to move on to somebody else to get a story, but you're able to be aware of those lead times. I think that is important. All right, the next item is how to determine if a story is newsworthy, and Stephanie's going to talk you through this part.
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite things to talk about. And I'm just going to use an example of now, simply because the coronavirus is happening. I know some states are reopening. So when we're talking about hardcore news media, so your local news, newspapers, even your national news, so your CNNs, your Good Morning Americas, all the morning shows, everyone is talking about the coronavirus. So if you are not talking about the coronavirus, or your client or even yourself, your brand has nothing to do with the coronavirus, I'm going to need you to sit out this media pitching right now, because the only stories that they're going to be taking right now are strictly stories that tie into the coronavirus in some capacity. Or, with the NBA possibly returning very soon, they're also taking on those sorts of stories as well. But at the end of the day, everything revolved around the pandemic. So I can give an example. So I work with a nonprofit that caters to pediatric cancer patients, and we provide resources to parents and families who are not able to afford their treatment. And so naturally, this is not a time for me to pitch a feature story. However, because I am on the inside, I happen to know that one issue that our foundation is currently being faced with is that the coronavirus has stopped a lot of our patients from being able to get safely to their appointments because they're considered high risk. So what I did was I pitched a story to the news media saying like, hey, we know the coronavirus is happening, but this is how it's impacting the lives of America's most vulnerable children. And so in turn, I was able to get that story picked up, not because I had this amazing story to tell, but because it's a story that they're interested in telling right now, because it does surround coronavirus in some capacity. I'll give another example. I have a client who is they created an HBCU resource app. And so that's definitely like, hey, we want to start getting more feature stories. And it's like, okay, but no one cares that you created an app. There are millions of apps out there. How can we make you guys stand out? And so I started doing some research on things that are happening within the HBCU community. And one thing I found out through my research is being able to see like, hey, HBCUs are struggling financially because of this pandemic, because they're having to pour in a ton of their resources into internet access in underserved communities that their students are now living in. And so I was like, okay, great. So let me pitch this story to local networks across the country saying, hey, HBCUs are struggling and here's how. And then also import my client into this story simply because he's also a HBCU resource hub. So he is an expert on all things HBCUs. In addition, the journalist told me like, hey, we'll 100% run this story for you if you can connect us to a local HBCU. So again, using those relationships that I already had, I was able to connect them to an HBCU administrator to also complete their story. So now not only have I given that journalist a story for the day that he doesn't have to work out to seek sources for, but I've also created an atmosphere where he knows he can come to me anytime he needs sources or anytime he needs help as it relates to HBCUs. The next thing is impact. I think it's really important that whatever your story is, take some time and think, how will my story impact the lives of other people? Will other people care, or do I just care? Like, does John Doe care that I wrote a book about 10 ways to sell your business? Maybe, maybe not. But the thing is being able to tap into that story and figure out how you can make other people care about your story. So maybe it's not, getting press about your new book. Maybe it's about how you're using the sales of your book to be able to donate 15% to charity. At the end of the day, you want to be able to be providing a resource. It's about you, but you can't make it all about you. And lastly, think like a journalist. Like I said, I have an advantage because I am a former journalist. But I encourage you guys that whenever you are approaching a publicist, if you decide that you don't want to do this on your own, really think about the story that you're hoping to get press for and ask yourself, is this newsworthy? If this journalist ran my story today, could it save their job? And I know that may sound crazy, but what many people don't realize when they're pitching journalists, especially in the world of social media that moves so fast, is that these journalists, they're writing stories to save their job. In fact, I have a friend who is in a major market who said they literally have scoreboards in their office of what journalists have the most points and most read and the most shared and the most likes on social media. And so at the end of the day, they're looking for stories that pull on your heartstrings, stories that have value and impact, but most of all, stories that have the potential to go viral. And if you don't have one of those three things, the journalists have no need to really run with your story, because at the end of the day, they need the story that's going to make them look good. So again, keeping in mind that what's in it for me. And I also want to take a step back in terms of impact, because this is another, I guess, cheat code you could say into gaining press and also increase links on your site, is scholarships. So if you are a brand new company and you're looking to gain some press, and you want to, gain press on a college website, or you want to gain press in your local newspapers, consider a scholarship. Even if it's a $200 book scholarship, consider doing those things within your business, because when you do, all you need to do is reach out to the schools that you want to target. So let's say if we're in North Carolina, so let's say if you say, okay, I want to give a $200 scholarship and I want to target students at UNC, North Carolina A&T, and UNCG. Well, reach out to those universities and say, hey, I'm giving out a $200 book scholarship to students from your university. Would you be willing to post my scholarship opportunity on your website? 9 times out of 10, they're going to say yes, because all universities have a scholarship page. And boom, you now instantly have a link on a university site. And then in turn, local news media, they often go in and they produce these syndicated lists of scholarships that are available for college students. So not only do you now have a link on a prominent university's website, but you now have access to, the opportunity to be syndicated on other news sites as well, as they provide those resources to high school students as well as college students. So those are just a few things that you want to keep in mind when you're trying to slide into the door. Like Amy and I say, we always like to give you guys free tips because there are so many folks out here who will charge you ridiculous amounts of money to do PR for you. And before you spend money that you don't really have, perhaps it's really important for you to just try to do a few of these things on your own to see how far it can get you, especially as you're looking to build up press early on.
Yeah, and I'll just add, from bad experience of paying a lot for PR, there are, very few people who will say these things to you, right? They'll take a quote unquote story that you said you want to pitch, and then they'll just pitch it for you instead of letting you know, like, Stephanie's really good. That's not newsworthy. Like, I know you think that's great, but it's not. And so I probably have taken at least 15 things to her, and she's been like, no, don't waste your time with that. And it really is important to think like a journalist and think about what's important to them, what's going to help them in their job, what's going to help their audience. And it's very counterintuitive. It's like you want press for yourself, but it can't really be about you. It has to be about what's going on in the world or what's going on for that audience. But it's a critical mind shift, I think, for a business owner to realize what makes something newsworthy and how you can pitch yourself towards those newsworthy stories, but it may not be directly your story. And I think that's really important. All right, the next topic is free PR ideas. And Stephanie, you can keep going with this one.
Okay, yeah. So perfect your pitch. So going back to what I said earlier is when you're trying to perfect your pitch, I encourage you to ask yourself, is this newsworthy to someone other than myself and my mom? And that's really important because you can go to your mom and say, hey, I want this story done about me. And your mom's going to say, oh, yeah, that's great. That's not always true. So you want to make sure you're perfecting your pitch. How you can do that, here are a few examples. Every morning I also go, and this may be in another slide, I also go online and I see what topics are trending in any given industry. So for instance, if I have a client who is an MBA agent, I'm going to go and I'm going to search all things MBA to see what's trending. Based off of that, if I see MBA free agency starts in 15 days, then you know what? My client is going to be an expert on the MBA free agency in however many days it is. And so what I do is I utilize what's already trending in the Google News section, and then I craft my pitch according to that. So for instance, I'll say, we're 15 days away from NBA free agency, and my client believes that this season is going to go downhill because of the pandemic. I pitch that story because A, it's already trending, but then I allow my client to be an expert in the topic of NBA free agency. So again, being that resource on top of the already existing and trending news, because you can already prove to that journalist, hey, these are things that folks are talking about right now. It's already news everywhere else, but here's a different spin on the same topic that everyone else is talking about. Another one is partnering with the cause. So going back to my scholarship example, so offering scholarships, offering opportunities to partner with local charities. Even though these may seem like really cheesy things, they are great ways to get press because everyone loves a good charity story, especially if it pulls on the heartstrings. And I will tell you, those stories that pull on the heartstrings, they have a higher chance of going viral. And remember what I said earlier is that journalists are looking for the opportunity to go viral if possible. So again, partnering with those local charities, national charities, or again, donating a portion of your proceeds to someone else, to another cause that's greater than yours. Because at the end of the day, you want to show, yes, your company is great, but your company is great because they care about other companies also being great as well. Additionally, cross promotion. So we have talked about this on several of our other SEO webinars, but going back to cross promotion is like reaching out to other bloggers, other websites, other companies, other brands who may have complementary services to yours. So if you're a copywriter, maybe cross promotion for you would be, partnering up with a publicist or an event planner or someone who offers a graphic designer, someone who does not offer the same services that you offer within your company, and saying like, hey, I would love to share this content on your website. Would you be willing to let me, post a guest post on your site with, you also providing a link to my website in exchange for that? And 9 times out of 10, folks are going to say yes. But make sure, again, that you build that relationship with the person already, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to reach out to a complete stranger and say, hey, can I post on your website? And I don't know who you are. I don't know what you have to offer. I don't know if your reputation is good or bad. Just be very careful with that. And I say that because that's the equivalent to you going to a complete stranger's house and knocking on their door and saying, hey, can I build a house on your property? And they're just like, I don't know you. Why would I do that? So make sure that whenever you do come to partners or potential partners for cross promotion opportunities, make sure you're doing it genuinely. But again, at the end of the day, make them feel like you're providing more value to them than them providing more value to you.
Okay, so then lastly, we have a couple of resources. We've touched on a few of these already, but 3 resources that we think are really helpful and also free that anybody can use, and you can really use them ASAP. The first is Google Alerts. Google has the ability to let you schedule different alerts based on different topics. So you can choose literally anything. And if something is being written about it or something is on Google about that topic, you'll get that in a message. Like I get mine every morning. You can set, how often you get them and when you want to get them. Definitely, just as a standard, you should always kind of Google yourself, so to speak. So have your own name and your company's name in these alerts, so if anybody is mentioning you, things like that. But also any of the topics that your business covers, any services that you cover, anything that makes sense that would be relevant, you can get those Google alerts, and that way who is writing about it. And you might start to see the same names, you might start to see the same publications, but also it's just another avenue to have something sent to your inbox where you do a little bit of work up front to set it up, but after that it's just coming into your inbox every day, and then you just have to scan it and see what's relevant and what's important to you. The Google News, like Stephanie talked about, that's another just quick search and just see what comes up to the top, what's on that first page. So that's just really the most popular things, the most important things, the things that are trending, and that you can search for nothing. You can just let it run and see what comes up. You can search for specific sports or specific towns or anything like that, and it's going to show you the latest news for those topics. That's another good area. The alerts are a little bit more, they come to you. Once you get it set up. With news, you're just having to go out and find it. But both of them together can be pretty powerful. And then the last thing, if you haven't heard of this, you definitely, should sign up for this. But this is Help a Reporter Out is what this stands for. And I think it's probably been about a year or so since I heard of it and signed up for it. It's free. They have like a paid service. I'm not sure if anybody pays for that, but I just use the free version. But basically, you sign up for the free version, and then you kind of choose your categories. For example, they have categories like technology. They have business, is what I signed up for. They have like household and lifestyle things. So they have all these different categories. And basically you have reporters all over the world. I think it's a global thing, so it's all over the world. And when they need a source or they're stuck on something, they'll submit it to this organization. And then it's the same thing like your Google alerts. Well, I think I'm signed up to get 3 per day. So 3 times a day, morning, lunch, evening, I get an email for every category that I've signed up for. I signed up for 4 categories. So I get 4 emails 3 times a day. And it's this laundry list of journalists who are looking for sources for certain stories that they're writing. And I would say out of, in the past year, maybe 10 or 12 that I've submitted for, probably gotten half of them where somebody actually reached back out to me. So it's a pretty good thing. It takes, you need to spend a little bit of time kind of crafting your response to it, but it's not time consuming at all. And then it gives you additional, it could be a small outlet, but it doesn't matter. It gives you more and more opportunities for your name to be online somewhere that links back to your website, like we were talking about earlier, something that you can put on your own website in your press section. And so it's pretty helpful. And again, it's free. It takes a little bit of time to get used to how you should respond back. You need to be pretty brief. The deadlines are often really aggressive. And so sometimes I just, you just have to ignore it. But there are times where somebody might need something in 2 hours. And so it's pretty aggressive. But usually the good thing here, usually everything is written. So they're just asking you to respond back by email. Very few times have I seen, occasionally I see where they want to actually interview somebody, but usually they just want an answer to a specific question, or they have bullet points that they want you to respond to, and then you just kind of follow those instructions. But it's a really helpful tool and a great way. Most of the time when I've done it, if I've gotten in some kind of article or on a site, they'll usually promote it on social media, and then that gives me some other piece of content to promote on our social media. So it's a really helpful tool. You're helping out these reporters and these journalists, but they're also helping you as you're building your own personal brand or the brand for your company. And so these 3 things, I would say all of them are valuable. I use all of them. I'm sure Stephanie used all of them. They're all valuable, all free, and not significantly time consuming. So
and what I will say too is, like you said, is that with HeyRo, it is very detailed. But I will tell you guys to make sure that you do take some time and think through your pitch. So if they say that they are looking for a beauty expert who can talk about the damages of sun on your skin, please don't email them and say, hey, what are you looking for? They just told you what they're looking for. And what journalists tell me is like that is their pet peeve and their number one turn off. If you ask them what they're looking for after they've already told you in the description what they're looking for, they know that you don't pay attention to detail, and they definitely don't consider you an expert anymore because you can't read. So make sure that you actually answer it based off whatever it is they say. There may be another time when they'll say, hey, we will not respond back and forth. So I need your biography. I need your picture. I need your statement all in one email. Give that all to them. Don't say, hey, when do you need this back by? If they say they need it, give it to them right away. Because the more closely you pay attention to those instructions, the better chance you have of them actually running with your quote or your story, or whatever it is that you're pitching to them. But make sure you do pay very close attention to those details, and again to those deadlines, because with HeyRo, if there is a 10 o'clock deadline and you realize that it's now 10:02, if you click on the link and you try to submit your pitch to them, it's gone after 10 o'clock. So it'll bounce back to you. So make sure you don't waste your time responding to inquiries that are already past their deadline dates as well.
Yeah. And I think 2 more things. One is, we use Google for our email, and you can create a canned response. So I have a canned response in there that at least has my bio. They're sometimes very specific. You can't send attachments, so you have to send a link to your picture. So they are pretty specific, but you set up that canned response, then you can have all of that part taken care of. You're just putting your pitch in there, but all your standard things are taken care of. And then the second thing I want to mention is once last year, I was actually referred by someone. So I had created a pitch, it was accepted, and it was in some type of article. But then that person, like a month later, sent me a notice to some other journalist that was looking for something. So it really is helpful just to be reliable. Like, Unfortunately, I guess they don't have that many people they can rely on who are dependable. But if you become that person, then you become, like we said before, that resource to them. And they know that you're going to respond quickly. You're going to provide all the information that they ask for. You're not going to be a bother to them. You're just going to provide them with good content. Then they'll come back to you, and then they'll send other people to you too. So it's a really good free tool. All three of these are good, but Hero is a really good tool. We appreciate it. And we hope that you guys have a great rest of your evening and a great week.